So you're in the right space if you signed up for open source cybersecurity, crypto crimes with Arachne Digital. And what we'll cover is first we'll start with introductions and icebreakers. We'll get into the presentation by Kade, do any questions and answers, and then end with a couple of closing announcements. So just to get started, Arachne Digital, we are a global cybersecurity organization that focuses on cyber threat intelligence, and we have an open source tool called Thread. You can learn more on our website, arachne.digital. Jen has been doing a lot of work to get it working, and it's looking good. So first off, hi and welcome. My name is Vic. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the community manager for Arachne Digital. I'm actually based in Texas currently. Some things I like outside of open source tech are just like poetry, art, and if you were in the chat earlier, I'm currently just like obsessed with my cat. She's my whole world, so I have entirely too many cat photos. And I love all things like community related. I think it's really cool that we have people here from all over the world and just from different backgrounds and spaces. My background is in design, graphics, and visuals, but I've been doing work in open source for a while now. And I'm going to kick it over to Kade.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kade. So I'm one of the co-founders of Arachne Digital. My background is cybersecurity. I'm based in Wellington, New Zealand. I guess one of the things that I'm very interested in, particularly at the moment, given this point that we are in history, is very much around how do we build community. It's something that like I did a little bit with, as well as like volunteering with Mozilla a few years back, and trying to see how we can do it outside the structure of a relatively large organization. Arachne is relatively small, but we are starting to grow. So just looking at sort of like how we can start bringing people together. So I'm really proud to be holding these kinds of calls. So I want to, give thanks to both Vic and Jen for supporting this.
Hey
I'll
everyone.
pass it to Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Jen or Janine. I go by she, her, and I'm on the tech side of things at Arachne Digital. So if you do end up wanting to look at code contributions, I'm probably going to be your point of contact for talking you through and helping you and getting things done. So outside of doing the tech stuff for Arachne, I'm big on volunteering. So Kade mentioned that he volunteered with Mozilla. That's how we met. I also volunteered. And I'm also going to be another cat person here because I also volunteer at a cat adoption center and I was there today. So that was really fun.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, y'all. And Jen, you should definitely share some cute cat photos in the Slack channel. Always open to that. Cool. So if y'all are unaware, or maybe you were here last time, our last call like this was open source cybersecurity, a walkthrough of Thread. So Thread is our open source cyber threat intelligence tool. This video is on YouTube. In case you missed it, it was last November. But this year, this is the first in the series. So thanks for joining us and expect some more exciting topics in the future if you follow along. So we'd love to learn a little bit more about where y'all are. So in the chat, or if you'd like, you can come off mic or on mic and in camera, share your current location, time zone, and maybe an emoji you're vibing with. Right now, I am in Austin, Texas. It is 3 p.m. on a Friday, but just so y'all know, Kade is a whole day ahead of us. And I'm a big fan of the sparkle emoji, in case you can't tell, based on this slide. And Prince, I know you're quite far away as well. Scotland. Yeah, I think you've joined us before, right, Serhi? Welcome back. And Matt Carey, I know you're probably also in Austin as well. Oh, Prince, if you're trying to be off the mic, I think you might be having some mic issues. Great. Yeah, so we have folks all over. It's morning time in New Zealand. Oh gosh, 1:30 a.m. Thank you for joining us from India. That's, I hope we make this worth it for you. Oh, no worries. No worries on the mic. Thank you for joining though, y'all. Appreciate y'all engaging. And if for any reason you need to hop off, I think it's pronounced Samil, we will have the recording available for you, but we appreciate you being here at 8:09 p.m. Great. What time is it for you in London, Jen?
Time is 10:08.
Gotcha.
So not bad.
Oh, and Samil, sorry, were you going to speak?
No, I was just saying like it's kind of Friday night, so it's all good. I can stay up late.
Awesome. We caught you at a good time. Perfect. Well, thanks for joining. Appreciate it. All right. So before we dive into our topic, we did want to see in one word in the chat, if y'all can type how you feel about crypto. Maybe it's multiple one words, but just to get a general like feeling of what the vibe is with the crowd today on crypto. I will share my one word and then, yeah, feel free to pop yours in. All right, we're starting off with two S words, suspicious and skeptical. Anyone want to add something else in? Oh, futuristic. Okay. Exciting. All right. Oh, unpredictable. I think that's like a good, we have some stuff on maybe either ends of the spectrum. I like the futuristic one because yeah, it's the future is here, right? Looks like a good mix. Awesome. Thanks for sharing, everyone. And okay, so as we get started and move into this presentation, we are on social. So Arachne Digital on LinkedIn, Arachne Digital on Blue Sky as well. Feel free to take a screenshot of our slides and share, or if there's anything you want to share from your takeaways, it'd be great to tag us. Again, you'll also find the recordings and everything shared on these platforms and all notifications about our future events here as well. And of course, as we get started and continue, we would love to hear your feedback. I'm dropping the link in the chat as well. This is the second event of the year that we're hosting, but the first in like a series of events. So hearing from you is really important to make sure that we're creating content and opportunities for y'all to get connected and yeah, learning. So up next, we'll have the actual presentation. Kade will be talking about crypto crimes. So I'm going to stop presenting and pass over the presentation to Kade. After they're done presenting, there'll be an opportunity for questions and answers, but feel free to pop those in chat as you're thinking about them. And then afterwards, we'll move into announcements. All right, Kade, I'm gonna stop presenting now.
Okay, so I'll start presenting and we're going to see if this works. Okay, so hopefully that's coming through for everyone. Brilliant. Okay. So I guess to get us stuck in, I wanted to basically get us everyone on the same page as far as, so if we're going to talk about cryptocurrency and how it's being used, so just a quick definition of exactly what it is that we're talking about. So I found interestingly, the Merriam-Webster dictionary had one of the best definitions. So they define cryptocurrency as any form of currency that only exists digitally, that usually has no central issuing or regulating authority, but instead uses decentralized systems to record transactions and manage issuance of new units, and that relies on cryptography to prevent counterfeiting and fraudulent transactions. So I guess to break those bits down, so we're talking about a currency that exists purely digitally. So that's not like there's multiple different currencies that can do that, or that can at least exist in some form digitally. But getting into the interesting bit, so it's usually not issued by an authority that's allowed to mint currency. So nation states normally guard the ability to generate currency quite jealously. Each country will normally have sort of like one central body that is like formally allowed to issue the currency of that country. And if anyone else does it, it's called counterfeiting and it's illegal and you go to jail for it. So it's very interesting that we now have this form of technology where people can mint their own currencies sort of outside of that system. It is usually decentralized. There's nuance to sort of how that plays out, but in general, what we're talking about is there's sort of no overarching body that can basically interfere in the process of a number of different transactions. We'll get into it, but basically you have sort of like our international banking system. Like banks will have the ability to like reverse transactions in most instances. They can see a lot of the transactions that are going over the network. We have the international SWIFT system that centralizes a lot of its powers. So cryptocurrency doesn't have some of those elements. And then the final bit is it all rests on cryptography. Okay, my slides now don't seem like they want to transition. Okay, there we go. So looking at sort of like how cryptography actually sort of plays into making this currency actually function. There's like a whole bunch that goes into this. I'm only going to scrape the very sort of barest levels of the surface, but basically you have this concept of public-private key pairs. So you can generate two keys, which will be your public key and your private key. And what these keys do is they basically allow you to either encrypt or decrypt information. And encryption is basically just putting a cipher over the information so that it is secret and that it cannot be read. So basically, you make these two keys. People can use, so basically you'll make your public key public, which is why it is called your public key. People will use that key and they will then encrypt information with that key. You will use your private key that is private to you, only you have it, and only that key can then decrypt that information. And so it's this system that is sort of the basis for how a lot of our cryptocurrency actually functions. It's actually the basis of how a lot of our encryption just for technology in general functions. So it's kind of like a very like broadly applicable form of concept. Now, specifically for cryptocurrency, basically you can sign your transactions with your private key. Now that proves, because in theory, only you have access to that key. So that proves that you have basically approved that transaction. You're saying this transaction is good to go. It's giving it some form of authority. People can then use your public key because everyone has access to that. And they can verify that, yes, it was actually you that made that transaction. So that starts to give us this level of trust. All that information is stored on technology called a blockchain that has some particular properties to it. The key thing is it is immutable. So basically there's a hash that's taken sort of for each transaction that's stored on the blockchain. So we can have this system that cannot be altered. Again, there's some nuance to that, but the theory is that it cannot be altered such that we can prove which transactions have taken place. All of that starts to give us things around like proving ownership, proving these transactions have occurred. So getting around the problems of repudiation. So someone saying, well, no, I didn't make that transaction. What this all boils down to is cryptography starts to provide trust. It's the way that you can't basically just copy and paste cryptocurrency to make more cryptocurrency. The transactions are stored on a blockchain. People can tell that, okay, well, this cryptocurrency wasn't here before because we have no transactions for it. It starts to basically say that we can have some trust in how the system functions. And that's how we have currency as far as something that just sort of cannot be created willy-nilly that will start to function. We have this idea that a lot of data in theory, but we have this idea that data wants to be free, as far as once you have digital copies of things and they're online, it's then very hard to control them. This is the entire basis for the issues around piracy that you see, as far as like pirating like movies and books and that kind of stuff. Like once you have a digital copy of a book, you can copy and paste it, and then now we've got 2 book copies, and you can start giving those out. You can do the same with movies, all that kind of stuff. Very hard to control data. Cryptography is the way that we have gotten around that for cryptocurrency, and that's how it can function as a currency. Now, why is this relevant to cybersecurity? As you said before, so the international banking system, it has this centralized nature to it. It has lots and lots of checks and balances that are built in to detect and stop criminal transactions. The cryptocurrency ecosystem either has a lot fewer, where they've just not implemented a lot of these different controls, or they actually go out of their way to make it harder to implement these controls or make it easier for people to do things anonymously. And that basically lends itself to a lot of issues around crime. So cryptocurrency does facilitate some elements of cybercrime. If the cybercrime that you are committing has anything to do with money, cryptocurrency is what will basically sort of be in there. So an example is ransomware. If you are basically encrypting someone's network and you're holding them to ransom and you need to be paid, you don't want to be paid through the international banking system, because the banks can see that transaction. They'll see it's quite large and they might say, okay, well, this is a bit suspicious. A large transaction is someone you've never transacted before. We'll put a hold on that. We might reverse that transaction. We might start asking more questions about it. If you are the person receiving the funds, well, you had to set up a bank account. The bank probably has what's called KYC, which is know your customer. It's processes the bank will put in place to make sure that they know who you are when you set up an account. So you have to show ID when you set up a bank account. You have to like provide certain amounts of evidence to show who you are, such that if there are any like things connected to that bank account that they know to be criminal, they know where you are and they can pass it on to police. So you don't want that if you are committing crime. So you will move to something like cryptocurrency, where you don't have a lot of those things. Cryptocurrency can do lots of things, not just things to be used around crime, but the ecosystem, the way that it is built, at least currently in its current form, does lend itself to facilitating certain elements of cybercrime. And now, why is cryptocurrency relevant to geopolitics? So this is something that I am quite passionate about and something that I like to promote. So getting into some elements around North Korea, which is what a lot of this presentation is going to be about. I'm not going to get into sort of the ins and outs of like all of sort of the history around North Korea, but I do think it's worth understanding, as far as we talk about North Korea a lot in the news. We call it the Hermit Kingdom. We see it as this small, impoverished nation that somehow has a nuclear arsenal and seems to display an outsized military capability to what it is, or at least what we think of what it is in a Western sense. But it's good to understand sort of how the situation actually came about. So basically, Korea used to be one nation. At the end of World War II, so the Japanese occupation of Korea at this point ended, and the country was divided at the 38th parallel by the US and the Soviets during their negotiations. Now, there was a government set up in the south and a government set up in the north, and both of these governments said, we are the one and true government of Korea. The government in the north then invaded the south to try to reunify the country. The UN denounced this, and they sent in forces that was primarily, it was about 90% or so comprised of United States troops. They invaded the south, retook the south, and then the Korean War ensues. Now, this war basically raged across the Korean Peninsula, up and down, basically like destroying Korea over the course of multiple years. Now, the war ended in an armistice. So there was actually like no formal peace that was created between North and South Korea. It was just an armistice, which is just purely a cessation of military hostilities at that point. But the state of war did not end. So the two countries are still considered to be at war. And North Korea has since built this like relatively what we seem to see a relatively like large military considering its size. It has a nuclear capability that it has demonstrated on multiple occasions. We are now seeing that they are deploying forces to parts of both Russia and Ukraine to fight in that Russian invasion of Ukraine in support of Russian forces. So they are starting to gain like real, actual, like live, like military capabilities. They haven't been in an actual full-scale war where they've been gaining that knowledge since the Korean War. A lot has changed since then technologically, so they are wanting to sort of advance that. And so we have this military machine for this country that is considered to be relatively impoverished. And I guess that impoverishedness, it's worth understanding, comes in large part from the sanctions that are placed upon North Korea. So much of the country like falls under international banking sanctions. So it's in the vast majority of cases illegal to send money to Korea, or sorry, to North Korea. It means that they just cannot access the international banking system at all. You can't get loans. You can't be doing business in that country. It just cuts them off from the international economy pretty much in all way, shape, and form. But they still have this military capability. It still needs to be funded. They still want to advance it. They still want to be purchasing things. They want to be developing more missiles, more nuclear capability. And that money needs to be coming from somewhere. So this is where we enter, so APT 38. An APT, so this is an advanced persistent threat. So it's basically a term of art that is just talking about a group of hackers that are backed by a government. The naming conventions here can be quite complex. So you will hear APT 38 called Trader. So that is an alias that is like synonymous with APT 38. There's a partial alias in crypto core, which means that some elements of the activities attributed to this name called crypto core are performed by APT 38. Some elements are believed to be performed by other groups. And basically APT 38, so it's a group of people that are hacking. They are members of the RGB, so the Reconnaissance General Bureau, which is part of North Korea's military. So it's also worth understanding, so North Korea, it is officially called the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. So you will sometimes see it referred to as the DPRK, and then you have the Republic of Korea, which is South Korea. So you have this group that's stealing cryptocurrency on behalf of the North Korean government to fund the government. And it's just one group that they have. They have quite a number of different APTs. Again, for their size, they have an outsized number of APTs. They have an outsized hacking capability. And this is just one of many groups that are going around and stealing cryptocurrency for the regime. And we will sort of go into some of the ins and outs of what they've seen to be doing relatively recently. So before we start getting into what's happened just this year, so I want to look at the scale of the problem. So as of last year, so 2024, it's believed that North Korea's government has stolen 1.34 billion worth in cryptocurrency. So it's fair to say that the cryptocurrency ecosystem, I believe it's fair to say that the cryptocurrency ecosystem is funding a decent portion of the North Korean military just through these funds that are being stolen. And so we're talking about 1.34 billion that was stolen last year. That was across 47 incidents across 12 months. So we're going to have a look at, it's only like, we're not even into April of this year. So let's see what they've done from January to March and see how that stacks up with the last year. Okay, so these slides, they have a little bit of like text in them. I'm not going to read through all of them. There's just some sort of key elements that I'll pick out. They're made to be a little bit woody, so you can sort of go back and read them if you do want to. So getting stuck in, so we're looking at 1st of January. So the exchange No Ones was robbed for $7.8 million. Now, those funds were sort of gradually siphoned out over 2 days through various small transactions. And that's the kind of stuff that I find to be quite interesting. And that's the stuff I'm going to highlight as far as not necessarily the technicals of how all this is done, but sort of what is the procedures of how they go about siphoning out these funds and then subsequently laundering them. And then so after those funds have transitioned out of the exchange, the funds are sent through Tornado Cash for mixing. This attack was not formally attributed to North Korea, but Tornado Cash was used. We're going to see that term used in a little bit. And it has become synonymous with North Korea in the press. It is not fair to say that North Korea is the only organization using it. There will be other criminal groups that do use it, but we do see Tornado Cash coming up quite a lot when we talk about North Korea stealing cryptocurrency. Now, saying that Tornado Cash is a mixer, so like what is a mixer? Just to define that quickly. Now, the thing with blockchain is like people believe that cryptocurrency, or a lot of people will believe that it's anonymous, and that's not really true. There's, again, a bunch of nuance behind that. But the blockchain, so for each coin itself, it keeps the transaction history, which makes stolen currency actually very, very traceable. You can see where it has come from. It's actually one of the key aspects of the blockchain, that ironically, while this ecosystem does facilitate a lot of cybercrime, it's actually quite easy to track it as well. A mixer is an attempt to get around that. So basically the idea of a mixer is it's an exchange. It basically is a pool of cryptocurrency. You put your currency into the mixer will take a cut, which is how they get paid. And then you get some number of coins equal to sort of what you've managed to put in. You get those out. And those are different coins than the ones you put in. They have an entirely different transaction history to the ones that you put in. So all of a sudden, you now have cryptocurrency unrelated to the theft that you've conducted. That is what a mixer does. Tornado Cash is a mixer, and we'll mention a couple of others as we go through. And then zero knowledge proofs is something that is like a part of sort of how this ecosystem works as well. So we have this concept in encryption called a zero knowledge proof, which basically it enables users to prove that they have a certain amount of information. They have like certain pieces of information without revealing what that information is itself. Now, this is great for like different sort of use cases around privacy. Again, unfortunately, it also has this application that can be used in this criminal element. So you put your cryptocurrency into a zero knowledge mixer. It'll generate a note that proves that you have a deposit of a certain amount, but you are not publicly linked to those specific coins or the actual transaction itself, as far as like the money that has come into that knowledge, that has sort of come into the zero knowledge pool. You will then, to take your coins out, you present your note. The note verifies that, yes, you are entitled to a certain number of coins. You take those coins out. There is no connection between you and that initial transaction. So again, you've achieved this ability to get these coins unrelated to the hack. They have a different transaction history. You're not connected to the initial hack itself. You're not connected to the coins that were put into the mixer. The mixer doesn't have any knowledge around any of that. You've just been able to get your cryptocurrency, and it's effectively like unrelated to that hack, and you can do whatever you want with it in that sense. Okay, so later in January, so the 28th, so Femex is another exchange. They were robbed for 85 million this time. So again, so digital assets, they were stolen over 125 individual transactions recorded across 11 blockchains. So you can't transition cryptocurrency across blockchains. The idea is like if you have Bitcoin, it is tied to the Bitcoin blockchain. That is where the transactions go. However, we have this concept of cryptocurrency bridges, which is basically the idea that you can show that, hey, I have a certain amount of cryptocurrency on one blockchain. I can then get that value recognized on another chain. So I get a token issued to me connected to this amount. You can now use that token on this new blockchain as if it is currency. So that is sort of how they're able to basically have all these transactions across 11 different blockchains, and still unify it into sort of one currency that they end up wanting to use. So basically, we look here that a lot of this stolen cryptocurrency was transferred into Ether, and that was done through Tornado Cash again. And this hack was attributed to APT38. So we have confirmation that this attack was performed by North Korea. On the 5th of Feb, we have the Ionic exchange that was robbed for 8.8 million. Now, again, there wasn't any official attribution on this one to North Korea. I still think it's worth mentioning some of these hacks, even if they're not positively attributed, because it just gives us an idea roughly of the scale that we're talking about as far as how much is being stolen by various parties, not necessarily just North Korea. But here, yep, so we have 8.8 that has been stolen. So the 11th of February, we have ZK Lens, so they were robbed for 9.5 million. Again, there's no attribution for this one. We don't know if this was North Korea or not. This is purely speculation on my part. I think it probably wasn't. So the cryptocurrency, after it was stolen, it was put through a protocol called Railgun, which is one of the, interestingly, few things that have sort of been built into this ecosystem that actually does have some checks and balances built into it. Railgun will check the transaction. It'll see if there's anything fraudulent about it, and it will basically freeze the funds if it does find there to be something. Railgun, in this case, did find there to be an issue, froze those funds, and now the funds can only be transitioned. They can only go one place, which is back to the wallet they were stolen from, just basically reversing that transaction. The reporting was really sketchy around this, so I can't tell from the reporting if the currency was actually returned or if it was just frozen in Railgun. But again, we're talking about 9.5 that was lost there. Now, this is where the Bybit hack starts as of the 19th of February. Now, we don't know all the ins and outs of actually how this hack has been conducted. There's a bunch of theories floating around in the public domain. I'm just going to be talking about sort of specific elements that we do know to be true, and we don't yet quite know exactly how all these elements add up to exactly what happened, but they resulted in a lot of cryptocurrency being stolen, as we're about to see. But basically, so here we have the 19th of Feb. So it looks like at some point, so APT38, you'll also hear them referred to as Lazarus Group. So you'll see in further slides that they are referred to as Lazarus Group. That is sort of how they're known in the international press. I prefer the term APT38 just because it's a little bit more specific as far as what we're talking about. But we see basically that it was a JavaScript file that was replaced, and it was replaced not actually within Bybit's ecosystem, but within one of their vendors called SafeWallet. So this is technology that Bybit was using. This file has been modified, and the next time that it's run, it's basically done something to the multi-sig cold wallet for Bybit. There's also talk around it's believed that the North Koreans were able to get into the AWS environment for SafePay, for SafeWallet. We don't quite know like how that's tied in, but they were basically in SafeWallet's ecosystem doing a bunch of various things. And we also see, as of the 20th, they spin up this domain, Bybit-assessment. Now, I find this to be interesting as well, because when you look at a lot of these attacks, you will often see that infrastructure like domains and other things, they're spun up sometimes like quite early on in the piece, and they are just sort of sitting there waiting to be used. This was spun up. Spoiler alert, we're going to see that Bybit gets robbed the next day on the 21st, but this domain was spun up the day before. So this group, basically, they aren't bringing in infrastructure until they absolutely need it. To me, this very much speaks that they have their processes down. They know exactly what they're doing. They're able to get things to where they need to be pretty much at that immediate time. And I believe that they're sort of doing it in this sort of very like fast manner because they are not wanting to be detected. Again, we start to see that this hack is attributed to APT38 because we start to see this email address that's used for this domain. It has been attributed to other attacks that we know that APT38 have conducted. So here, the 21st of February, so Bybit is robbed for 1.4 billion. So the prior hacks that we were talking about were in the millions. This one that we're talking about is in the billions. And so basically, so Bybit, they put out a statement and they've said that they basically have this panel that is something that is what they use to approve their transactions. So they've gone to make a transaction to put money into their multi-sig cold wallet. And they've said that their panel that they sort of look in to check the details, that showed to be correct, but the underlying smart contract had been modified. So while the information they were seeing showed, yes, your funds are going to go into this cold wallet, the underlying smart contract was saying the funds are actually going to be sent out. So they've now stolen 1.4 billion. That's all sweet. That's now in cryptocurrency. They now have to launder it. They now have to get to a point where the currency cannot be traced back to Bybit so that you don't know that it's been stolen. So how they go about that? Within 2 hours of the theft, so the stolen funds were shifted to 51 different wallets. And so it was ETH, so that was stolen from Bybit. And so they've basically split it across all of these different wallets. And the wallets were then drained one by one over the course of 9 days as the money is taken out one by one of each of these wallets, and it's transitioned to like various stuff across different blockchains that we will have a quick chat about. Now, what they're looking to do here is they basically want to convert it to Bitcoin. So they do that across a couple of different exchanges. So there's, I'm not sure if it's pronounced as EXCH or EXCH. So it's an exchange that has no KYC, so no your customer protocols. So people can put transactions through there, no questions asked. And unsurprisingly, it's one of the exchanges that North Korea is using to launder their funds, to basically change the coins into something that they want to use. They want to get it into Bitcoin. And it's believed that they want to get into Bitcoin just because there's more liquidity for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is accepted in more places. So it looks like that's why the end goal is to get it into Bitcoin. And so basically they're using a few different exchanges to do that. And now they start putting money through mixers. So they use Crypto Mixer and Wasabi Wallet to begin with. Okay, so the 28th of February, so within 48 hours of the hack, so we're looking at like 160 million has now been funneled through a list of channels. I guess the big number here is so USD 400 million at this point has been moved in sort of like various different ways. It's not yet actually untraceable. It's just being moved around at this point. And like 400 million within 2 days. So the organization called TRM Labs, they are an organization that does a lot of blockchain research. So they're putting out a lot of statements. And one of the things that they're saying is like to move 400 million within the cryptocurrency ecosystem within 2 days, that is an unprecedented level of operational sophistication that any organization has displayed as far as trying to launder funds. When we talk about attacks, you can talk about them in sort of two different axes. You can think about them as being technically sophisticated, as far as like how technical is the malware that they're using, how technical are the different capabilities that they are sort of like stringing together to perform this attack. But we can also think of it in operational sophistication, as far as just how good are their processes? Do they know what they need to do at each stage? You can have the most technical malware in the world that has 0 days and it's exploiting all these different things. But if you don't know what you're doing at each step, like you're not going to be able to get to where you want. But it seems that to move like this amount of funds, like North Korea is very well drilled as far as like, cool, this is our playbook. Like once we have these funds, we know exactly what we're doing. So they're displaying quite a high level of operational sophistication in this sense. Now, so we've got this is up to the 26th, and the laundering for the Bybit hack is continuing. On the 28th, an entirely new exchange is robbed. Now, we don't actually know the name of the exchange. All we've seen is the transactions, and so they amount to about just over 3 million. And again, this has been attributed to, like, the press is calling it the Lazarus Group. I prefer the term APT38, just so that we are a little bit more specific about what we're talking about. Either way, it is attributed to North Korea. And again, we're seeing these funds being transitioned into Tornado Cash. This again is very interesting. So like you have an entire operation of laundering these funds, and they are able to have like enough, like if you think of it in computing sense, processing power. Like they have enough people on the ground, they have enough know-how that they can run multiple attacks simultaneously while they are sort of doing all this. Getting back to the Bybit hack, so at this point, so we have the initial 51 wallets that the cryptocurrency was in. It has now all been drained. So by the 3rd of March, it's now been shifted. And it's been shifted from the initial 51 wallets to about roughly 4,400 different addresses. So basically, you've gone from Bybit to 51 addresses, then out to thousands of addresses. Now, all this is still traceable because it's still like very much sort of on a blockchain, and you can sort of see where it's come from. It hasn't yet gone through mixers, but this is just an attempt at what we call flooding the space, just providing so many transactions that it's just too difficult to trace all of it. At this point, it is starting to get into mixers. So we have seen that some of it has already gone through 2 different mixers, and it's continuing to sort of be placed into different amounts of mixers. Interestingly as well, so there was reporting around the fact that mixers will normally receive a few million to at max 10 million a day. And there's only so many mixers in the world, but there's actually not that many of them that exist out there. And with the cryptocurrency ecosystem, you have to be quite careful because people could stand up a mixer and say, "Oh yes, I am a mixer," and just take your funds and just not give you anything when you put money into them. So you need to know which ones you can actually trust if you do want to be using them. And North Korea has $1.4 billion to shift, but they can only do about 10 million a day. So this functionality that's been built into the cryptocurrency ecosystem to facilitate money laundering at this point is bottlenecking because it cannot hold, like it cannot process all of the funds that are trying to be laundered through it, which like I think is like just an absolutely wild state of affairs. The 5th of March, still 77% of the funds are traceable. So they've only been able to get a portion of it into mixers. Now, this can be because the mixers can't handle all of the money all at once. It can also be because this is still people at the end of the day making these transactions, and they're doing it across 4,400 or so wallets. That is 4,400 that you have to go into to start making transactions to. So at this point, so we've still got 77% of them are still quite traceable back to the initial hack. They haven't yet gone through mixers. By the 12th, so they've transferred 750,000 into Tornado Cash. So again, we start seeing that they used Wasabi wallets and another wallet earlier. Now we are seeing, mixers, Wasabi mixers. So we're now seeing that it's now coming into Tornado Cash, which is another mixer that we've seen them to be using in the past. So once it gets into mixers, it's still in cryptocurrency. And if you're wanting to pay troops, if you're wanting to buy different things on the black market, as far as pieces that are going to go into a missile, if you're wanting to buy things that are going to go into a nuclear weapons program, you often can't do that with cryptocurrency. You need what we call fiat currency, which is just cash, like it is the physical currency that we transact with on a day-to-day basis. They need to get it into cash at some point. So how do they do that? So if you have a look, so this Telegram channel, so Investigations by Zach XBT. So they are an investigator. You can find them on a couple of different social media platforms. They, again, are sort of just tracking a lot of this stuff themselves, and they just post information about it. So this person, so Zach XBT, they're actually cited in a lot of the different news articles that I went through as part of this presentation. And so one of the theories that they put forward is, so they're saying that, oh, hey, look, I'm looking at one of these people that's laundering money for DPRK, so again, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, that is North Korea. And he's saying that, oh, look, this person that's doing this laundering, they're in a bunch of cryptocurrency channels, but they are also in a bunch of not safe for work channels. And the language of the channels is in Chinese. So it's believed that there are traders in China that as their day job will be sort of functioning as part of this laundering ecosystem, they will pay in cash for this cryptocurrency. And then it's down to them to sort of do whatever they want to do with it at that point, but they'll pay in cash for it. So it seems that a lot of the money that is coming into North Korea is coming through China. And it's coming through these traders that are basically buying cryptocurrency off them. Now, so to look at the new scale for the problem. So again, so North Korea's government, they stole 1.34 billion worth of cryptocurrency across 47 incidents in 2024. In 3 months of this year, they have already exceeded that. So like back of the napkin math, I know there are some hacks that were not necessarily attributed to them, but there is some elements that you question, was it North Korea or not? But just looking at the Bybit hack alone and the other hacks that we know to be attributed to North Korea, we're looking at roughly 1.5 billion that's been stolen in 3 months. And I stopped tracking them at this point because I had to actually write the presentation. There has been I've been sort of working on this presentation over the last couple of days, I've been hearing the news talking about there are more exchanges that are sort of coming out saying they've been hacked. So this is sort of continuing to go on. And some of these funds will be lost as far as it'll be taken in transaction fees. So as you make transactions on the blockchain, someone is taking their cut somewhere. So some of that money is going to go in that sense. Some of it can be frozen through exchanges. If they realize some of it's been stolen, they might freeze it. But at the end of the day, that is a very, very large amount of money that is being funneled into North Korea that is believed to be primarily being spent on their nuclear weapons program, as well as sort of their various sort of military elements. And it's money they would not have had otherwise. They don't have access to the international banking system. There is billions going into this country that physically would not be happening otherwise if the cryptocurrency ecosystem either didn't exist or it took better measures against all this. So little pitch as far as the work that we are doing. So where does open source cybersecurity fit into all of this? So I think there's actually sort of two elements that I find to be very, very interesting in this sense. So there's a lot of CTI, so cyber threat intelligence, that can be done around this, because blockchain is deliberately designed such that you can trace transactions. There's a lot that you can see. So that person that I quoted, so that investigations, this investigations by Zach XBT, this is just an individual, this is just a person. And they are talking about looking at these hacks that they are seeing. There's some companies that are trying to sort of look at this at scale and use software to do it. But as an individual, you can do it. Blockchain is public, you can see this. I find it to be very interesting that we can literally see what spy agencies are doing in the public domain. We think of it as this very sort of secret, clandestine thing, but there's lots of information in the public domain that shows you what these espionage agencies are actually doing. So I find that there's a rich amount of CTI that can be gained in that sense. If you look at sort of the work that we are doing, as well as strictly open source software being applied to these cybersecurity problems, tools like Thread that we're working on can be used as part of a threat-informed defense program. So the idea with Thread is you will feed information into Thread, it will give you TTPs, and you'll be able to tell that we know that those are relevant because we can connect them back to a hack that we've seen that's happened recently, that for whatever reason, you will know is relevant to your industry in your geography. So if you know the TTPs that you're going to be coming up against, what this other thing that MITRE ATT&CK does is it lists out, so these tactics, techniques, and procedures, TTPs, what do you do as far as mitigating and detecting them? You can put those things in place to stop these attacks, or at least to be able to detect them, to give you an ability to respond to them. And Thread is open source. Anyone can use it. It's publicly available. So the more that it gets used by be it cryptocurrency exchanges or any sort of organization, the more that we can make an impact on stopping these kinds of attacks. So by contributing to open source projects like Thread, and there's others, there's many other groups out there that are doing this kind of work. But if you're contributing to open source tools that are going towards solving these cybersecurity problems, you are basically creating a force multiplier that is protecting organizations across the world and stopping these kinds of attacks. So I think it's fair to say that contributing to open source as long as the technology is applied like in the security space, you can honestly say that you are going some way to doing your bit to stopping like what we're talking about as far as billions that are going to fund nuclear weapons programs and militaries for countries that are now participating in overseas conflicts across Europe and other places. Like geopolitics are really fraught right now, and anything that we can do to stop these problems, to stem them in some way, shape, or form, I think is a good thing. So just again, a very quick pitch. So Thread, it's a tool that we put out. It is something that you can access online. So we have a web application for it. You can also download it. If you want to go to our GitHub, you can run it locally. We're really, really keen on it being used as part of a threat-informed defense program. So figuring out, using threat intelligence, like what are the current TTPs, techniques, and procedures that are relevant to you, and how do you want to protect yourselves against those? Like that's where we see cybersecurity going. Okay, sorry, I've done a lot of talking. I'm now going to pass back over to Vic, and if there's any questions, I am more than happy to run through stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, Kade. Let me go back to presenter mode. That was super insightful. Are there any, sorry, gotta go through the whole thing. Sorry about that. Are there any questions that y'all might have? We have about 5 minutes until closing. Anything that came up, terms, anything from Kade's presentation? Yeah, go for it. You're welcome to go off mic.
So I was just thinking that since this appears to be involving a lot of risks, so like how do we do the risk assessment for this? Like if we are trying to do it publicly and then there are many parties involved, so how do we manage the risk here?
So if you are, I guess, like looking at what risks are applicable to you for an organization, so be it a business, be it a not-for-profit or whatever it happens to be, they may already sort of have their own sort of formal ways of how they want to do it. The way that we suggest looking at it is basically if you figure out, okay, so which threat actors are relevant to your industry and your geography. So if you're watching the news, like let's say that you are a cryptocurrency exchange, let's say that you're watching the news and you see that another exchange is hit, and these were the TTPs that were used. The one that's hitting cryptocurrency exchanges is probably going to come after you. So in intelligence, we have this saying as far as the way you predict the future, as in who's going to attack you, you look at the past. Who's attacking your industry and your region? They're doing that for a reason. So if you are targeting like the US for particular reasons, you're probably going to keep doing that. It's like you have either a political agenda or it's where the money is, that's where you're going. Like whatever reasoning you have to do that, you're probably going to keep doing it. There's particular sort of regional conflicts around the world where certain countries are going after one another. They're going to keep doing that because they have a reason for doing it now. That's going to continue. Like those rifts between countries are not going to go away anytime soon. So they're going to keep doing what they're always doing. So look at the past. Look at who has targeted your industry in your geography prior. That's who's probably going to target you in future. So how you do that, like you can just sort of read the news and sort of get across that kind of stuff. You can start to structure it in a more formal way. So we as an organization, like we have access to a database that we have built up that we can basically like do reports from, and we can sort of see, okay, so we've seen in the past, these are the threat actors that target your industry and your geography. But if you want to do that yourself, I mean, really at the end of the day, it is sort of just sort of keeping across the news and sort of figuring out sort of what these attacks are, like just doing your own research. So this is what we call like institutional threat modeling. So figuring out what your threat model is for your organization. So you look at who's targeted this organization in the past or organizations like us. You then look at, okay, so what are the techniques they use currently? Once you know that, like that's what you're going to be seeing as far as wanting to defend your network. We use frameworks like MITRE ATT&CK because MITRE ATT&CK very cleanly will then tell you, okay, so based on this technique, these are the things you want to be doing to protect yourself. Like invest in these types of tools. If you have a seam or some sort of detection capability, these are the logs that you want to have access to so you can do the detections, that kind of stuff. It gets quite down in the weeds and can be quite technical, but it's a nice way to sort of shape up from threat landscape through to techniques, through to these are the technical things I need to do in my organization to protect us. That's sort of the process that we are promoting that people work through. I don't know if does that answer your question? Is there anything more that you wanted me to talk on around that?
So what I'm understanding is that these are for like if some organizations might need help from these processes that you have developed. But I was thinking like if someone at an individual level are planning to be part of it, then will these be applicable to them as well, or is there a separate process for that?
So it's still going to be applicable as far as it's just going to be more work for that individual. So basically, and again, like I don't want to just be specific to like our organization. There's like lots of different open source tools that you can sort of use that's out there. If you are using our tools, it would be a case of you're using Thread. You are needing to put information into Thread. You're going to need to get that information in, and you're going to need to do the research yourself to figure out what's relevant that needs to go into the tool. The tool will then tell you these are the techniques that you should be caring about, but you will need to do that research up front. And if you're just an individual, you can do it, and there are some organizations that just rely on sort of one person to do some of that work. It is a lot of work though, so it's doable, but it's not the easiest thing in the world.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Awesome. And I think we have one more question in chat, and then we'll work to close, and we can keep the conversation going in Slack. I'm going to go ahead and drop the links in case anyone has to head out early. But Matt Carey asks, can holding crypto be made safer if it's held longer term as a hedge against inflation without being actively traded?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter sort of how long it's being held. It's just going to be down to how accessible is it. So at the end of the day, someone is going to need to get access to that wallet. I guess there's a truism in hacking as far as if you can access it, anyone can access it. It's just a degree of how hard is it going to be for someone to do it. So depending on if you have a wallet with an exchange or if you have a hardware wallet, sort of matter however you're doing it, at the end of the day, you have like the keys to that wallet. It's going to be down to like, where is that wallet? How are those keys stored? If someone can get access to those, be that you or anyone else, like someone can get in. But it's a matter of making it easy for you to get in and harder for other people to get in. So it's down to sort of like how that key is going to be stored, how that access is maintained. If you can protect that, then that's going to be your biggest bet. So yeah, it's not really around sort of how long it's going to be held. It's like the access to it. How hard is that to get access to?
Awesome, thank you. And we are at the end of our time, so I'm just going to quickly go through these last slides. We have a couple announcements. I dropped the links in chat, so please make sure to share your feedback. Kate spent a lot of time working on this presentation, and this is the first one that we've done this year, and we'd like to provide more opportunities for everyone to learn about relevant issues in cybersecurity, understand how open source tech fits into cybersecurity ecosystems, and just connect with other professionals that are interested in open source and cybersecurity, as well as the Arachne Digital team here. So feedback is appreciated. You can join us next week. We're having our contributing onboarding. So if you're interested in contributing to a Thread or our other open source project, or just the general community that we're building here, please come join us next week. The event to register is on Eventbrite. We'll be posting them in our social, and like I mentioned, it is now in the chat channel. This is specifically just to talk about the projects that we're working on, and yeah, learn more about them. And finally, you can continue the conversation with us in Slack. So if you fill out our invitation request, you'll get an email to join. There we have various channels. Some stuff is just more fun, but we're also like sharing articles relevant to cybersecurity. And that is all I have for y'all today. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you spending time here, especially, it's like 1, 2 a.m. over there in India. And it's like the weekend for people. So again, appreciate it. We will work to get this up, all the information and details from this presentation up early next week. So thanks everyone. Have a good day, night, evening, afternoon, wherever you are. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.